Great. So I'm Torsten Lorenz, work at Lab49 in New York, and I'm going to talk to you about module-driven development. So this talk is going to have separate sections. I'm going to first, try to show you that it's a good thing and that it's not a new thing that you should modularize your applications. Then I'm going to show some of the challenges you may face and some of the patterns to overcome them. And then I will use this tool, REPLpad, that I created to show as an example how it helps you to pull out modules, and it actually helps you to create new tools from whatever you pull out of other tools or libraries or whatever. And finally, I will show some tools you can use to become module-driven, like to speed this whole process of publishing modules up. So, okay. So I read this book recently, The Art of Unix Programming, and this book is about 10 years old, but most of it is still relevant. So I would recommend reading it. And I pulled out some quotes related to modularity and module-driven programming. And the first one basically just explains what modularity means and how it should be done. So it should be small modules that have clean interfaces you can use. Then this one is basically the anti-framework rule, meaning that if you build something as a framework, you better have proven first that it couldn't be done in any other way. So first try to build it with separate modules and then maybe do a framework. And for instance, a thing like Connect did the opposite, but at least learned the lesson. So this one basically says why you shouldn't build frameworks, because it's hard to reason about the code and to get into the code. And if someone wants to contribute or fix a bug, it's going to be hard for anyone to find out how this stuff actually works. Prototyping is another important one. So the idea here is that you implement the minimal functionality and then you're ready, put it out there. And if you have small modules, that is actually good enough because someone who finds an edge case can come along and fix it for you, or you may fix it later, but you can keep going pretty quickly. And so this is a summary of all of this, basically saying that if you don't write your libraries or applications as separate modules, you'll be in a world of pain pretty soon, and there will be no way to maintain this. And it will be especially hard if you think about the community to get contributions, and work together like that. It's just almost impossible. So let's get back to Node. And now, whenever I say module, I actually now mean an NPM module, right? That's actually published to NPM. So let's talk a little bit of what's actually a module. And Reynolds was of the opinion that anything that is a separate file in your lib folder should be a separate module, even if it is totally specific to your app. And Substack doesn't agree. I don't necessarily agree because it has to be some concern that's general enough where other people can reuse it. It shouldn't just be relevant to your app, right? So if it's somehow coupled to whatever, or your library, whatever you're using, it doesn't make sense for anyone else to use it because it's they can't use it by itself. So this is another important thing, also by James. Every module is a function, right? And this basically the main point to take here is actually that a module should be so small that it does one thing only, right? It addresses one concern. And in a lot of cases, that will actually just be a function, right? And if you look at your library or whatever you have, and it looks like it couldn't be just a function, well, maybe look again, and maybe you find that it's actually doing three things instead of one. And once you separate them out, then you end up with three modules that actually are just functions. But of course, there are exceptions where you're solving one concern and it's not just a function. But just take that away. Let's take an example from Haskell here. Haskell has this cool thing called Hoogle. And Hoogle is a search engine for functions. For instance, you can say, oh, I need a function that's taking an input that's a string and has an output that's a string. Like, say you're looking for URL encode or decode or something. And then you get something like this. And you can look through this, and then sure enough, you'll find URL decode. So they got it right. They basically saw that most of the times when you're looking for reusable code, you're actually looking just for a thing that does one thing, and maybe you even know exactly what the input should be and what the output should be. Unfortunately, in the Haskell world, they then combine all these into really big libraries, and you have to pull in the whole library. But that's another story. But the idea to take away from here is that if your code is small enough, if you really have small Lego pieces, you can actually reuse it much easier. If you have a bunch of Lego pieces pieced together and you're trying to then use that over here, it's harder to do, right? So, but the whole thing about modules is easier said than done, right? So, but why do you still want to do it? Because it's worth it, right? And why? Because, as I just said, it's ease of use. Yeah, people just can pull in your module really easy and use it, because that's one thing. And then, if they find a problem, right, they can easily fix it for you. You can test it separately. It can evolve separately. You can get better community contributions and so on. The other thing is, if you pull out a module, you're actually forced to write README, right? Because, no one's going to use it if they don't know how to use it. So you end up writing documentation for parts of your code that otherwise you may have not written it, right? So that's actually a good thing. It takes you a little more time, and you're actually doing it for for others. But I have read my own READMEs so many times because I kind of forgot how stuff works. And small modules have a small learning curve, and we need that, because if you build a Node app and you're pulling in a bunch of modules, you don't want to sit there for more than like half a minute learning how this stuff works, right? Because you're gonna pull in a lot of them. So there's some challenges though to do that, right? To separate stuff out into modules, and one of them is it's kind of hard sometimes to you're in the middle of your library or app and you kind of see this function and to realize that this function actually solves one concern, or like to say a piece of code, and it could actually be pulled out, and that's especially hard if your code is kind of coupled, right? So they kind of go along with each other. Like if your code is coupled, it's hard to see that it's standalone in the first place, and once you see it, it's kind of hard to pull out. But certain patterns will help you with that. So the first one is that you should separate out your code into separate files to begin with. So when you create a function, just already put it somewhere else. Don't put it in the middle of some other piece of code. And the reason is that if you like reference a variable inside a function, that's really easy if it's in the same file, right? But if it's in a separate file over here, you actually have to do work in order to couple yourself to other pieces of code, right? But if you already made that mistake, if you already coupled yourself, then just decouple continuously. So as your code is evolving, continuously look for these pieces that could be separate, but kind of are now coupled, and just put the extra work in and take care of it and decouple it. And once you decouple it, then continuously take those functions out and put them into separate files, so you don't run again into the problem that you may couple them. Right? And once you have them in separate files, then pull them out into non-app specific modules. I kind of emphasize here non-app specific because, as I said again, otherwise it doesn't help people that much to have them on NPM. And let's go over the pull-out process real quick. So let's say you decided I want to pull out this one function into a separate NPM module. So first of all, you create a separate Git repo. And usually what I do, I just go to GitHub and I create a new repo there, initialize the README, and just clone that repository, and everything is kind of initialized from that going on, like the remotes are set up and everything. And you want to initialize the package JSON, of course. And then you want to take the tests. Maybe you already had tests over there and wherever your module came from. You just want to move those over. Otherwise, you have to create them. And the reason is, if people are looking for all these modules, they're not going to use something that doesn't have tests, right? Because I'm not going to start using something and depending on something that, first of all, I don't know if it works now, and I don't know if it will keep working in the future because there are no tests. And show me that it works right now by using Travis or TestLing to have kind of continuous integration going on. And as a result, you get these nice little badges. So for the left one here, build passing, that's for Travis. And basically, Travis, you can test anything you can test on the command line. And every time you push to GitHub, it will update that badge. It will run your tests. So anyone coming to your repo or NPM module and on NPM registry can see that it's actually working. With TestLing, it's a little bit different. It tests in browsers. So it will show you what browsers your module actually works in, right? And it's very useful, right? Let's say you only have to support browsers, and you're looking for libraries, and you see it works in all the browsers, but it fails in the explorers, but you could care less, right? Because you don't have to support explorers. So it gives you a good picture there. And then include a license. as far as I know, if you don't include license, there's a default license that gets applied automatically. So for some shops, that's kind of hard to deal with. It's better to just put a license. And then, as I said, write a good README. And with a good README, it needs examples, right? So usually when I write a module from scratch, I start out with an example, and then I kind of drive the code from there. And then I may reuse that example actually for tests. And then I just use that exact example, and I paste it in my README, pretty much. And since your module is so simple, that's all you need, right? Like, it doesn't do that much. Like, an example should be able to explain exactly what it does. You may include some API documentation as well, and usually what I do is I just put JSDoc inside my actually source code, and then I just copy-paste that into my README. So if I update it in the file, just copy it back to README if you want API documentation. And once you have that, now you can go and npm publish. And pick a good name here, and if your module is small enough, you should be able to pick a name that actually kind of defines exactly what it does, right? And also include good keywords, because you want people to be able to find your module. And now we are to the demo here, and basically REPL-Pad is a tool I created, and we will go through the tool. I will show the features and kind of keep them in mind, and then I will kind of show how the features were developed and how they were pulled out and how they became other tools and so on. So REPL-Pad I created because I wasn't too happy with the node REPL, and I was asking myself, why am I not using the REPL enough? And the main reason, and I know can everyone see this? Is that better? Okay, so, and I was asking myself, why is that, right? And the reason is because with the node REPL, I'm typing something in an editor, and it doesn't work, and then I go to the node REPL and type something else, and then it may be working, and then I copy it back into the file. So there's continuous back and forth that I have to deal with. So with REPL-Pad, the first thing it actually was doing was it just watched it watches folders, right? So can everyone see that? So basically, right now, I told REPL-Pad, hey, watch the temp folder, and it found these two files in here, and it started watching them. And now if I go over here and I save this file, it pipes the content of that file into REPL-Pad. And now I can just jump over here, and now I have foo, right? And I can play with it. And now let's say I create another function, bar. Well, that didn't work. So let's say I create another function called bar. And I'm going to format this kind of badly on purpose, and then return hi, right? Okay, so now I create this function, and that's actually exactly what I wanted, right? Now I can execute the append command. I can do that like that, or I can just press the Control-A for append. And what it is now, it said, the last possible code that you had was 3 lines long. Let me fix the formatting for you, and then let me put that back in your file. And now if I go over here, now it's here. So I can go back and forth and kind of keep playing with stuff, and I don't have to repeat myself, right? And the other cool thing was that I didn't want to like look at the docs by hand, right? I didn't want to pull up the Node.js docs. So if I have, say, read file, and I want the docs for that, I can just do that, right? And it basically renders the HTML right in your terminal. And so keep that in mind. That's done by a tool called Hermit. But the thing is, like, sometimes I don't trust the docs, right? And I want to actually look at the source. I can do that as well. So I can get the syntax highlighted source code of that module. Oh, and one thing I forgot. With the docs, if I don't trust this, I can actually go here, and it goes right to the piece on the page, and it looks up your Node version, and it figures out what docs to use and so on. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I wanted was I wanted Vim bindings, because I'm a Vim guy. So like that, let's just say that. And now I'm like in normal mode, and I can do Vim commands. It's kind of hard to see for you, but I can jump back and forth. I can replace stuff. So I have a full Vim bindings here. And I added a bunch of other stuff. In the essence of time, I will not go through everything. One other important thing I wanted to show, though, is scripty talking. So I thought it's kind of cool, you pipe your code, you get the end result, you can play with the end result, but I would maybe like a little more intermediate results as well, right? So I want my script to actually talk to me. So now I turn on Scripty Talkie. Let me actually make this part a little bigger. And now if I save it over here, it actually will pipe the code over here, and it will evaluate each section or each line separately. It finds out what code is possible by itself, and it actually works with comma first, as you can see. And it gives me the intermediate results. Like here, A was added with the value 1, B was added with value 2, and on that line, a bunch of stuff happened. C was added with value 4, A changed to 2, B changed to 3, and then the whole thing returned 4. So you kind of get intermediate results in your code to get really quick feedback, right? And that's pretty much, I think, all that I wanted to show for RepoPad. So now let's go back to. So here's a module graph of RepoPad, and this is actually created by a friend of mine. You can just type in any module here, and you can see this nice graph. And if you look at the modules that I basically implemented, you can see that RepoPad is composed of a bunch of modules that I did. So here we have NZ styles, keep that in mind, Hermit, which was a HTML renderer, Readline Vim. And you can kind of see that Michael did his request module in a similar way, right? So it's a good thing to do. So now we're going to go through some of these tools as an example. So the first one is NZ Colors. So NZ Colors I created because I wanted to print colored output in the terminal, and the modules that were there I didn't like too much. I just wanted a function that I can pass in a string and it colors it. And it started out kind of like this, and I was thinking, should I even pull this out? I wasn't sure, but I did anyways. And then a day later, I found out that they're background colors. So then it grew, right? And so it was a good thing that I pulled it out. And then a few days after that, my friend who was doing a trap framework, he was looking for exactly something like that, and he was also not happy with the modules that were out there. I was like, yeah, that's cool. I just created that thing, so you can use it. So you never know who may use your stuff, but if it's buried somewhere else, they will not be able to do so. Hermit, right? So basically, this is how the documentation is rendered on the website of NPM, and I wanted to have that in the terminal, right? And they actually have a JSON API you can use, and you can query modules and functions on there. However, the description is still HTML, right? So it's like, okay, that's going to be hard to do, but I still try anyways to just replace something, and it just didn't work out. And then I decided, okay, I need something a little bigger, and then I already started writing this module that basically renders HTML, and it works with, uses Sax.js actually to parse HTML, so that basically it looks like that. So that's pretty much, this is rendered like this, right? So that was kind of cool, and now what I can do is I can use actually that thing, and now I can basically do something like this. Right, because now it's separate. So now anyone can render HTML like this, and it has color-coded JavaScript and so on. And I know that there's links with the dump option, and that's probably more mature, but this has colors. So the next thing was I showed you the Vim bindings, right? So Readline Vim kind of started out right inside the REPL. So it's kind of like a hack where I overwrite the write function of TTY. And as you can see here, I pass in the REPL, so it looked like to me it's depending on the REPL, but then I look closer and it's only using the readline interface right here. So all I actually need to do is pass in the readline, right? But then I went to another problem where it's actually using the state here, which is totally like REPLpad specific, right? So how do I pull that out, right? I mean, it's basically what this does is saying, okay, if you're feeding a file, I probably don't want to be in normal mode because that's going to do all kind of crazy stuff, right? So I needed a way to pull out the REPL here. And then the other thing, what I wanted to do is I wanted the REPL to basically be told about when I'm in normal mode and insert mode to do certain things. But how you can do that is, you kind of invert the control. So here I'm basically allowing you to force into insert mode. So now the REPL can actually call me and tell me I'm in insert mode. And also whenever I go into the different modes, I emit events, right? So now I don't have to know about a REPL anymore at all. Like anyone, this thing is now self-contained and it just like has a specific hooks that it needs, and then I could publish it as a separate module. And it's a good thing I did because it grew pretty quickly. I added like mappings, all kind of stuff, and to have that in the middle of REPLpad would have just been stupid, right? Because now you can actually take this module and you can apply it to any read line, any node read line, and you can add Vim bindings like that. The other thing I showed was the scripty talkie thing. By the way, how am I doing in time? Okay. Not sure. All right. So scripty talkie, right? So that thing also started in the middle of REPL-PAD. Like I wanted to get that extra information, right? But then I decided, what it actually does is it takes a script, it separates it into snippets, and it evaluates them separately. That has nothing to do with REPL-PAD. How are we doing in time? Good. Okay. That has nothing to do with REPL-PAD, right? So once I made this command line tool, right? But once I had this command line tool, I thought it would be kind of cool to have that, right? To have basically to be able to have that right in the browser, to be able to also, embed this in a blog or in a presentation, and it's actually interactive. So this is clearly wrong, right? And we can fix it. So this is like an interactive code sample that you can put in your blog now. And if you want to understand why this didn't work, it's because 2 + 1 is not always 3. Right? So, and you can clearly see that now here, so you got the intermediate result there, and so now people can play around with this in the browser, and I wish I could get to over here, because you can also just open that in full view, and you can play around with it here. So you have a full-blown editor here with a terminal on the right that just shows you the result. And now if you look at this terminal on the right, this is, in the command line tool, this clearly renders terminal output, right, but including colors and so on. So now I was thinking, how can I make this work in the browser? And where the option was to use a different syntax highlighter that's for the browser, and you can actually use difflet, you can tell it to render HTML. But I thought this is like a common concern. People will want to use command line tools and make them work in the browser, so it's actually better to write a tool for that, right? That allows you to do that in general. So I created Hypernull, right? And Hypernull is basically that thing I mostly pulled, basically took TTY.js and I ripped out a bunch of stuff from it. TTY.js is a full-blown node terminal in the browser. Ripped out a bunch of stuff, improved it for rendering a little bit, and then now I can do Hyperwatch easily. So Hyperwatch is a thing where if I want to like watch my browser, watch my server output in the browser, I can do that now. So if I go here. Right, so now in the bottom left, I get all my messages, right? So let's say you're developing on the client side and you don't want to keep watching your terminal, or you have only one screen like I have now, and you're playing around, something goes wrong, but you clearly saw in the bottom left here that something went haywire, and then you can kind of open it up and you can look at it, right? And something else, you can do that, and you can scroll around. So that's that, and then I actually decided to put that onto my web page as well. So now I have to go out of. So now right now there's no terminal, but if I go to a very secret token, I can actually turn on scripty the Hyperwatch. So now I have a terminal here, and I can see my output that was rendered on the server. So I can actually inspect if there are problems in production by just turning that on. And actually, if you would go right now to the web page, it will also be there because now it's turned on. So let me turn that off. So as you can see, like this Hyperwatch was really, really simple. Once I had Browserify to make it work on the browser, and Hypernull to render a terminal output, so it was a good thing that I solved this in a general case. And now everyone else who wants to do something like that can use it, right? So, but the point is that I even gained myself from it, and I hope the community will as well. But you'll thank yourself. So now we get to the part where I'm going to tell you how to become module-driven, So phase 1, any standalone function, you right away put it in the lib folder. Don't even put it in the middle of somewhere else. And then whenever you have time, continuously, if you see something that's general enough, pull it out into a separate node module. Phase 2, you don't even put it in your lib folder in the first place. Like whatever I just said, replace npm, substitute npm for lib, and basically any standalone function that you're about to do or about to implement, just put them already in a separate module and then publish it. However, first of all, you should look if there's already a function that does what you need, right? And if it's not 100% there, if it's 90% there, still use it, fork it, because you can maybe help improve that module. And if you can do this. So you basically find this module, you fork it, you make it do what it actually needs to do for you, and while the pull request is pending, you can just install it like that. So that's my GitHub username, and let's say the module was called foo. I can just do this kind of line and can install it while you're waiting for the pull request, right? So, and then there are certain tools that you can use that help you to pull out modules and create new modules. You want to use either npm init or even better package init. Package init basically uses a template for your package JSON to generate package JSON for you. And it's important to note that you already want to have a Git repo with a full URL there when you launch that command, because it will put all these URLs in there for you. The other thing you want to use is Traversify. Basically, Traversify is a tool that will look at your stuff. It will generate a YAML file, and it will create that Git commit hook. So whenever you push to your Git repository, it will keep running your Travis tests. And then you want to use npm link. And npm link is it's basically kind of a hack, but basically so you don't have to manually link your stuff. So let's say you have a module foo that's used by bar, and you're pulling that out somewhere, but you still want to improve foo while you're using it with bar. You can say npm link foo to wherever it is now inside of your bar module, and you know, they kind of, so it's kind of locally linked, and you can edit foo in one place, and bar will get the updates and so on. And that's me. As I said, we're working for Lab 49 here, and we are hiring. So, thank you.